we use patterns to imprison the imperceptible. I want you to think about all the big terms we use for the imperceptible. Politics, economics, religion, there's a number of science, a number of these terms. And what's interesting is these terms are wonderful because they have value and we can identify with these terms, particularly when we get into more finer gradations. Are you a progressive or are you a conservative? Do you belong to this sect or do you belong to that sect? And even though they have a very powerful value in our life, they can also close us off to our real experiences with the world. We're using these kind of categories as shorthand, but we're really kind of shorting ourselves from having this authentic experience. And we become so ensconced in our worldview that we become sort of an ideological cartoon character of our real experiences in the world. I love this quote from the Nobel laureate Bertrand Russell. The whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, but wiser people so full of doubts. Think about all the people you know who are just sure that their way is the only way in the world, and they've closed themselves off to everything else. Now, this doesn't just happen for people who are kind of, ensconced in a worldview. It happens in everyday kind of rituals and everyday kind of mores and our language and our mindsets and the things that we do. I remember a long time ago going to Singapore and starting a business with an old friend, and I had come over to their house. And this old friend had introduced me to these young people that he had recently baptized. And I said, he belonged to the Latter-day Saints community. And we had a nice conversation. And as the conversation progressed, he turned to me and quite unexpectedly asked if I truly thought that Catholic babies could declare themselves for Christ. Now, I'm a Catholic, and I was kind of shocked by the question because I'd never sort of heard it asked that way before. And I asked him, had he ever been to a Catholic baptism? And he said he had. And I said, well, describe it for me. And he said, well, it's a lot of, there's a lot of pageantry. The priest bless the child, and there's certain vestments that people wear, and and there's anointing with oil, and there's a candle that's lit, and certain types of prayers are said. And I said, yeah. And I said, then what's the priest do? And he said, well, then they asked the godparents and the assembly a bunch of questions, and the assembly and the godparents respond back. And I said, why do you think they do that? And he said, I don't know. And I said, because in our worldview, in our view, it's not the child. It's the assembly that's agreeing to raise the child in the faith. So our worldview is it's the group, not the individual, that makes that decision. And he was kind of really nonplussed by this. He didn't know what to think about this because his worldview was it's all about an individual when they get to an age where they can actually make that declaration on their own. So even though it's an event that both religions have, it's interpreted in a radically different way. And the whole baptism is, in both cases, to bring somebody in a rational way into the mystical, into the sacred, so that in fact we have to open ourselves up sort of beyond what is the ordinary, and we have to sort of consider the unfathomable. Now, what ideas and beliefs hold you back? Are there things that basically are holding you back? So it seems to me that there are a lot of things in our lives that we have, sort of these large groups, these large clusters, if you will, that are very helpful to us to a point. And then at some point they basically kind of they kind of stunt our growth, if you will. So whether it's a belief in a religious system or a belief in a political system or a belief about how people should behave in public or whatever, there's always a point where that's no longer useful. Thomas Edison often said part of the reason that we miss these incredible turns or these great ideas is he said opportunity's missed because it's dressed in overalls and it looks like work. Yeah, we don't like to change ideas because it's hard, right? We have to give something up. And isn't that the truth about life? I want you to think about that for a minute. What are you willing to give up to make space for new ideas? And it's sort of like a portfolio where we have to rebalance our portfolio life. There are things that you can start or do more of. There's things you can stop or do less of. And there's things that you can hold, right, that hold on to. But the key to all of this, if we're going to have room for creativities, we need to stop things or do less of things. We need to cast some of that off. I was very lucky when I was a very young man. I got to ride on a red-eye flight with Jonas Salk, the great virologist who, of course, created the polio vaccine. And he told me something very interesting. He said, when you're really doing real creative work, people will ignore you when you start. And he said, as you progress, people will tell you that your creative work is actually wrong. You're doing it the wrong way. And he said, after that, people will tell you that your creative work is immoral. And he said, in the end, people would take credit for your creative work. And what Jonas Salk actually understood was that if you're really a creative person, because it's this form of positive deviance, because it's different, it's casting off, there are going to be a lot of detractors to that, but your only real opportunity is to keep creating. And even if you are an invisible innovator, you're still having the opportunity to create, you're still moving yourself forward. So I like to think of creativity and our creative life as rebalancing a portfolio. Now I go back to those archetypes. Part of what each group does is they have to embrace or think around or think beyond their dominant worldview. So if you're an artist, an artist love to think about, new ideas and great visions and sort of, discovery. Well, if you're an artist, maybe part of breaking that worldview, getting beyond that dominant logic, is to think more like an engineer and to think about, think about things that are more objective and scientific and quantifiable. Right, and vice versa. And if you are sort of that incredible, that sort of incredible sage kind of person that really thinks in terms of community and harmony and what we're doing with other people, maybe you need to be a little more self-centered, if you will, and think like an athlete and think about how you're going to overcome goals and think about what you're trying to do with those goals. But I want you to think about your life as if it's a portfolio. Now you can have everything, but you can't have everything at once, and that becomes the key. So maybe sometime in your life you're going to be a really great parent, but maybe there's a time in your life where you kind of have to be a little less of a great parent and a little more of something else. And the real challenge is people who try and do it all at once. I'm going to be everything. I'm going to be the super mom. And it never works out because nobody has that much capacity. So in order to get something that you really want, in order to make something really work in your life, you're going to have to give something up, right? You're going to have to give it up. And it's not just giving up tasks. It's giving up old ideas as well. It's giving up those imperceptible old ideas and constantly rebalancing your portfolio. So maybe this month it's about being creative, and maybe next month it's about making money, or maybe, instead of going to the gym for a month and sort of achieving your optimal weight, maybe it's about spending some time with somebody who needs help learning to read. But constantly rebalancing your portfolio. So it's wonderful that we have these kind of constructs that take the ambiguity of our life and it captures it. But we don't want to be caught up as prisoners in our own thoughts. So free yourself by looking all around these different kinds of constructs and reintroducing yourself to your actual and genuine experience in the world. Remember, creativizing is a mindset. Before you can act creatively, you must think creatively. If you'd like to learn more, go to my website and download the free ebook, The Enlivened Self. Until next time, keep creativizing.